The goal of this show is to help you break in and thrive in advertising and marketing. Welcome back to our brand side segment where we're talking to VPs of marketing, CMOs, people that run brands for a living. So it's a little bit different from our agency life. And you're going to learn all about that with Taylor Grimes. Taylor is the VP of global marketing at Goodyear. About a month from recording this, they released their first brand campaign under recent launch. Now Taylor is overseeing that. They're working with BBH and the team Pit Crew by Publicis. So it's really cool. Taylor sits down with us. He tells us how he broke into agency life, where he started at Crispin, Porter, and Bogusky. If you know me, I am a sucker for the old school Crispin stories. He was in the Miami shop, so that's always fun there. He talks about how he shot up the ladder in agency life and then went over to Goodyear, to the marketing side. So a good episode for everybody in the industry, not just the people breaking in, because you want to understand how these VPs of marketing think and what they care about, especially for the folks at Goodyear. Now, on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast Brand Side Edition. And as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right, Taylor Grimes, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Brand Side Podcast. How you doing today, sir?
I'm so excited to be here.
Let's freaking do it. We're going to talk tires. We're going to talk Goodyear. You're the VP Global Marketing, Communications, and Strategy person
here
at Goodyear. Is that correct?
ready to go. That is correct.
All right, tell us about what that means in a nutshell. Like, what are you in charge of?
So primarily strategy in two parts.
Okay.
Right. So think of it as part brand strategist, part communication strategist. We're going to use agency lingo to describe these things. So first and foremost, defining the brand position of Goodyear. It's 120 plus year old brand, but it needs to be modernized and reinvigorated. You saw the spot, I'm sure that was the first attempt at that, but underneath all of that, we're rebuilding the whole foundation of the brand. And so that's that's 1A. 1B is, what are the two narratives that we're looking at? Long-term narrative, thinking about what Goodyear is going to say for years and years to come, and then campaign narratives and executing almost like a comms planner as well. So my team handles both of those responsibilities.
Yeah, and what's interesting about your story is you started this role relatively recently, within the past 6 months, I would say.
I'm a newbie.
You're new to it, and it's a 120-year-old plus brand. So there's a lot of that like history for it, but you also worked at agency life.
Yes.
So we got to talk about how you broke into agency life, some of the lessons
so.
there, how you broke into Goodyear and the marketing side.
Yeah.
And we got some fan questions, car guy segment coming up too, that Jack's got loaded up on the producer mic, so we'll get to those as well.
Love it.
So we know your role at the high level. I guess, how do you, what is your team like to develop the architecture for the long-term brand versus a short-term brand? Or what agencies do you work with, or is it just you?
It is not just me. We have a big team, and I'll talk about the team in a couple of ways. My team specifically is a mix of people with a background like mine, an agency background, and a mix of people with tire-specific marketing knowledge or automotive-specific marketing knowledge. And we built that way on purpose because we wanted to have a little bit of a taste of the world in which we're playing, and a little bit of experience to kind of think of the brand differently and think about activating the brand in a different way. So that's my team. My team sits amongst other teams in the marketing group, the global marketing analytics group at Goodyear. And it's really broken up in a clear way, right? Where you have a media specialist, you have PR, social influencer partnerships, sponsorships. We're mostly strategy, and then we have an internal creative team as well.
Damn.
That can handle some things. So it's a broad group, and really, that's done on purpose, and we have to be very collaborative with each other to get things done and get things made. But I think it makes it really clear what you're meant to do, and there's clear swim lanes and shared goals, and that helps us operate as a team.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, we have help from the Pit Crew. BBH and Publicis, who we love, and they've been great partners so far, and we'll continue to work with them and do awesome, really consumer-facing stuff through the agency.
I like that. that. So you tap into them as well. Are you the person that's kind of like writing the marketing briefs that the agency goes and works on?
Yeah, I mean, primarily the strategy part of the role is responsible for writing an input brief or an intake brief or whatever you want to call, and that's whether or not we go internal only with it or off to the agency side.
Gotcha. So this spot that just came out, what was it, a couple months ago, April 25th. Is that correct?
Yeah, not a couple months.
Yeah, that was like,
It does feel like a couple months have gone by.
isn't
But
that
it was
wild?
maybe days,
That is wild.
several days.
Can you brief us like you brief them, like real quick, like in a nutshell?
Full transparency, I was not around for the brief of that spot. That comes from the pitch, which was before my time. But we all knew that we wanted to make a spot that represented the entire heritage and the rich history of Goodyear. And there's this amazing thing when you go back and look at the brand, that just all the things that the brand has done. I mean, from the blimps that everybody's familiar with,
the airships.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Technical term. To the racing relationships, to the famous people that have been involved, to the way cultures use the brand. Like, the whole point of that spot is that we always did these things. We still do them, and we will forever do these things. And it's very simple. And I was just so excited to see it come together because I saw a version of it right when I started months ago, and we've been working on it ever since. And it's crazy. It's actually probably better described by what was left on the cutting room floor. So like, Lightning McQueen is on the cutting room floor. Yeah, he's got Lightyear on his tires. The Batmobile is on the cutting room floor.
How are you guys cutting that?
It's just hard decisions. You got to make decisions.
What the hell?
It's hard to
Next
beat.
spot.
It's hard to
Another
beat
spot.
Back to the Future.
Yeah,
You know,
that was legit.
It's pretty iconic. So,
Yeah.
and we got to put some of our own stuff in there too. It can't all be cultural references.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it was a great mix. Agency did great work on the spot, and the reaction's been fantastic.
But why that campaign or that spot at that time?
Right now, yeah, I think that's a great question. It's twofold, right? So, you haven't seen anything in the market from Goodyear in a while. It's been about 4 years since we've been on TV with an actual like television spot. It also represents a shift that the company's undergoing towards globalization and towards really refocusing on tires. And so if you've watched any of the sort of the quarterly announcements or anything that our CEO is saying, you'll hear him say #1 in tires and service. And so all of the work moving forward is going to live under that objective. And I think getting back to simplicity and impact and that kind of car guy mentality was really the big point in an outward facing way. But I think inward, for the 68 or so thousand people that work at Goodyear, it was also a big sign that we're willing to do big dramatic advertising and messaging, and that, you know, we're taking a swing and planting a flag.
Yeah, it's just as important for internal communications as external communication. That's got everybody fired up. You got the
Very
pit crew
much.
helping out. Everybody's going to one mission here. I love that.
Yeah.
So then that might explain why they hired you on, like to strategize and communicate that vision out to the world.
I think more so what happens next.
Yeah.
What will we say next to follow that up, and how do you turn that into what is a very simple and dramatic flag plant into a platform that can live for years and years and years?
Can you give us a little teaser of what's
Nope.
to come?
Secret.
Come on.
No.
I tried. I've always tried to get a scoop. I try to get a scoop all the time. Never works.
I did just write the brief in the airport. Yeah, so it's coming. It's going to be good.
Okay.
You'll have to wait. We'll do another one.
I'm pumped. I'm pumped for that. That's incredible. Okay, then, like I was mentioning before, you worked agency life. You're now in the marketing position. So let's back it up, and we'll come full circle eventually. How do you break into advertising? Where were you at when you decided, I want to make ads for a living?
Oh boy, I'm a nerd for ads. So like, I was probably 6 years old.
Nice.
Yeah. The Budweiser Frogs or Spuds McKenzie, whichever one was going on in the mid 80s. I think it was probably Spuds. My neighbor's friend happened to be the marketer that made that work. And
Nice.
so as a kid, I got this crazy exposure to all of this iconic Anheuser-Busch ware. I grew up in St. Louis. And so like, you know, the AB work was kind of it when you lived in St. Louis. And it permeated sort of everything that you did. And so I've been obsessed with advertising ever since I was a kid. I made the decision before I went to school. I studied it. I, interviewed with people when I was still in high school to try and get an idea of what I should study.
That's so
I interviewed with people to try and go get my first job. And then that first job, and I said to you earlier, but I want to say it again, I love the idea and the concept behind this podcast of just figuring out how to help people get into the industry and get into agency life. Because it was challenging. I knew that at the time, it was 2004-ish. Crispin Porter Bogusky was the agency to be at, right? And
is it the Boulder one?
No,
or was that the Miami?
I was there before Boulder existed. So I started in May of 2005, and Boulder opened, I think, in July of that year.
So that's where you first broke into?
That was the first agency I worked
How
at.
the heck did you break into that? Because that is that is probably the greatest agency of all time at that time. I don't think there's anything better.
A little bit of perseverance, a little bit of dumb luck. So I wanted to be a strategist. I knew that. I called and I said, hey, I'd love to be a strategist at your agency. And they said, yeah, get in line.
Right.
There's about 1,000 people that are actively waiting to be interviewed. And so I just said, all right, well, I'll call back next week. And so I called back next week, and I think they got such a kick out of me just calling and asking the same question again in the dumbest way possible. And they said, they kind of asked who I was and where I'm from and what's going on.
Who's this guy?
And it turned out that the recruiter that I was speaking to was also from Missouri. And we just sort of started talking. And so every week I would call. And I would just say, hey, what's going on this week? Hey, Monica, what's going on? And we would talk about the work that they had just put out, or we would talk about what I was working on at the time, because I was working in a family company doing random marketing things. And then 6 months of calling later,
every week,
there was a massive not every week, but close to it.
Yeah.
There was a massive exodus to Wieden & Kennedy. A bunch of people left to go to Wieden & Kennedy. Now, they weren't brand strategists, they were media people. And so they said, do you want to come down and interview for a media role? And I said, absolutely, I will come down. So I flew down to Miami. I think I interviewed with like 13 people in one day, and I got a job offer at the end of the day. And so that is how I became a assistant interactive message planning and analytics person.
Oh.
Yeah.
That was the
gig. That was the gig. That was the
disgusting
gig. But it was amazing because that agency was so creative.
Right.
And that's what drew me to the agency. And I think what's so important for people, young people these days, is like, find an agency that's creating in your style and figure out who did that work and go look at that agency. It doesn't have to be the best name. There's so many great big and small agencies now that like, just find the people that do the work you love and go do it. At that point, they were doing like the crazy Mini Cooper work and the Burger King and Subservient Chicken. And that stuff just blew my mind. And so I called for 6 months straight and then took a job with a title I didn't want just to get in the door.
Okay, this is incredible. So you went to Oregon, you studied advertising. You knew at a young age. This is like one of the most important things is identify what role or like, get as specific and nerd up as much as possible about what you want.
Yeah.
I always tell people the first thing I ask students, aspiring advertisers, is what role do you want? And then they can't answer that, or they do.
Yeah.
And I go, where do you want to do it at? Like what agency? They might not know that. They have to develop their taste.
Yeah.
So it seems like you did that.
Yep.
You stayed consistent because you never know when that exodus is going to happen, whether it's somebody that like, or if they win a new piece of business.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't know. So you just have to stay top of mind, stay consistent.
Constantly shifting sands.
Yeah. Yeah. So then who did you work under and how did you pivot out of
We were a team of 2 in the digital message planning and analytics group at first. We grew to be more people than that because digital was kind of exploding. And that's why things like Subservient Chicken were even allowed to exist at that point. I think Crispin had, the talent is undeniable, but they also existed right at this moment where digital exploded.
Yeah.
And there were no rules and you could kind of do whatever. So Melissa Goodis was my boss, and I worked with great people. And media, I think at the time, was so creative. Like you could kind of come up with anything. And we used to have these great moments where an idea would happen, and they would come to us, and we would go, "Oh, I know where that can live." And you would go to this will date me, but I placed the first ever homepage video on MySpace.com. Does anybody know who it was for? You'll never guess.
First homepage video.
Tom, the original MySpace?
No, I wish it was for Tom. Just like a dating profile.
Are you talking about
Tom.
like a brand?
No, it was for a brand. It was for Hager men's slacks.
Really?
Yeah.
Good on them.
Yeah.
Early adopters.
Yeah.
The platform.
That MySpace lasted a good 2 years after that.
That's insane.
And then it tried to come back, but RIP MySpace.
That's fun. Well, I think that's so interesting. Like, to be in that shop at that time shows your hustle and the consistency there. I think that's so important for people to hear because there's so many options today. There's so many great people out there today. It's just find the people, find the work that you like, who's making it, and hunt them down. And then you go on, you're in the ad industry now. You broke in.
Yeah.
I see a couple different agencies here. You kind of follow the strategy lead and engagement strategy. Like, what was your niche? What did you end up owning in the agency life?
So the reality of the Crispin role is it turned into a very early form of comms planning.
Yeah.
It kind of, we got so big so fast that we started winning things without media. And when you're a media guy, what do you then do? And so I was always obsessed with strategy. So I just started saying like, okay, well, how can I work with this big new media holding company we have to strategically interpret the idea for them? And so what I don't realize I'm doing at that point is comms planning, but I'm doing it and I'm just trying to do my best at it. And so once I sort of understood that role and did it for a bunch of really big clients and started to understand the process of it and develop my own kind of POV on it, I started looking around for other roles. At the time, OMD was on the West Coast. They were one of the only big holding companies that had a strategy discipline. Now, was it brand strategy? No, it's what media people sometimes call strategy, but it's the same thing, you know, it's strategic planning around messaging and planning out campaigns. And so I wanted to see what a holding company was because it was 2008 and they were kind of upsetting everything.
Yeah.
I wanted to go to the West Coast. And so, you know, I called them and talked to them and wound up going over there. And that was a whole different world. I mean, I can't explain how different Crispin and OMD were at the time.
I'm sure.
It was just drastically different. And so I hung out there for a while. And then I think it was a little boutique agency that was running Xbox called Next. And so that was one of the best brand experiences I've ever had working on Xbox. It was just so much fun. And I think everyone should get to work on something at some point in their career that they're like a fan of and fully engrossed in. And I found out through that I'm not even a gamer. Like I thought going in, I was like, yeah, I love games. I'll go do this. And then I met real gamers.
Oh yeah.
And those dudes are insane.
Don't mess with them. Yeah.
They instantly ask your gamer score and then judge you harshly.
For sure.
But it's okay.
I love that.
It's okay because they had great opinions on what work to make and we made really creative things. But, you know, that was, it proceeded from there. And that was kind of how I transitioned from pure media into a more strategy focused role.
Can you define comms planning? Because I worked in
No.
agency landscape. Like, what does it even mean?
I don't
like,
think anyone can.
'Cause I need some help.
It's connections planning, comms strategy.
Experiential.
Not communications, though, because that's PR.
Right.
So don't get that confused.
Yes, sir.
But
He pointed at me.
no,
Like,
I
hey,
do.
don't get that freaking confused, everybody. Like, all right.
So many PR requests in my inbox that I was like, I'm so sorry that I don't do that. No, I've always thought of comms planning as simply mapping the narrative for a campaign and bringing an idea to life and creating a world around it, and not doing that yourself because God knows I'm not a creative person, but like encouraging creatives to think about the world that an idea could live in, and being the person there to go at a review and even say that's really cool, but it feels like a TV spot. So is there an idea that came before this, or is there an idea around this that lives in a bigger world?
Yeah.
That we can create more things that other people can grab onto and create from. And so that to me has always been, and I think it's because I was at Crispin and media was so creative that I just never let that die. And as I feel like as the media industry went towards holding companies and got way and way less creative, comms planning was the place where you could still kind of think of an idea and help support an idea and be a part of the creative process.
There's got to be like a alert edit thing going on for like buzzwords. Something hot right now that's been consistent on this show is brand world. It's like building this platform for the brand, understanding. No, it's great because it's actually like people should learn how to do this.
Yeah.
And it's come up a couple times. So like, how would you define like building a brand world?
I just think it has to be, it's a little bit bigger than a TV spot and something you just learn. It's like developing a taste for it. Like you just understand that idea is more of a platform, and it's like what you would think of as an actual idea, not a tactic, right? And so it's not something that is an execution. It's something that is an open door to think about more, to encourage people to go, oh, I could execute that in this way. Or a social person might go, holy shit, that means we could say this, that, and the other thing on our on our channel. And I think that to me has always been how I define the start of creating a brand world. And,
Yeah.
that world goes well beyond marketing and advertising. And I think that's the challenge now, like with me at Goodyear and what I see other great brands doing is how does the brand actually lead the entire organization into a place where no matter what you're making, it feels Goodyear or it feels Nike or it feels specific, like it has a signature to it. And then I think you're talking about when brand worlds can really add value and start to create value for an organization.
Yeah. Can we talk about the brand world of Goodyear, like the vision of it, like where you would want things that you can play in, things that we shouldn't play in?
Yeah, I mean, we're defining it right now, but I think as you see in that spot, the heritage of the brand means so much. And I think there's so much pride in the people that live in Akron and work for that company that we won't go too far outside of that sort of performance-oriented, competitive, kind of really straightforward and direct, say what you mean, sometimes race for it, compete for it, like just the ability to work hard and kind of show up in this premium but blue collar way, I think is where you'll see Goodyear start to grow into. And that's very purposeful because it means that our salespeople can continue to be proud of the brand and go out and sell. Our marketing can show off what we're doing in culture and create new things in culture. And then all of the other parts of the company can live into that, and we can do recruiting through that. You can talk about HR, you can talk about everything through this pride in the brand.
I would love to sit in on a briefing session with the agency. I want to just
Maybe we'll
I want to get fired up.
Let's do a live one.
I would love that. Yeah. We can hype you up and be like, let's go Taylor. Crush that.
They're the ones who make exciting briefs. I'd make very much straightforward briefs.
That's good stuff still.
Yeah.
How do you get into then? I see where you settled down. You live in Richmond, Martin Agency there. Yeah. You're head of business development there. Is that like a pivotal moment?
Very much so. Yeah. So I was running comms there, did some brand strategy there, and because I was helping develop comms, I was in new business pitches all the time.
Yeah.
And the leadership there just kind of got to see me in action in new business pitches. And when our CGO took a role as a CMO, Kristen Cavallo, who was CEO at the time, said, "Do you want to come run new business?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh boy, yes." Immediately said yes. Was incredibly excited about it. And I think it's one of the most transformational times in my career because you're really sitting on the other side of the table and you're kind of your own case study at that point. If you can make Martin a great brand, then you can make great brands. And so my role was to make Martin a great brand and then sell that as the success we could create for others.
Yeah. Can you talk about some of the wins that you had under your belt?
Yeah, I think my favorite one is split between Snapchat. We became their cultural moments agency, which was not a thing at the time.
That's cool.
But the pitch was just so much fun. And it was for Martin, which, I think at the time back in 2020 or whenever it was still seen as kind of the Geico, heavy TV, Martin as Martin. And to go in and just impress a company like Snapchat was it was a sign of change and a sign that we had the staff and the people to do something different. And then Busch Light was the most fun I've ever had in a pitch, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have fun pitching a brand like that.
Yeah.
And we did crazy stuff for that pitch.
They got the Apple beer back now.
They do.
Busch Light
They
Apple.
do. I saw
Apple.
that.
Apple's
I saw
back.
that ad.
I love it. So then how do you break into Goodyear on the marketing side?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of transferable skills between the biz dev role and what's going on inside of the marketing department at a company like Goodyear, right? It's not directly transferable, but there's more of the right mindset. And so I think just taking the biz dev role probably put me on the radar of some folks that I knew that were in other roles. And then the comms planning background actually came into play as they were developing more of a holistic suite of disciplines. You need somebody that looks over all of that and goes, how can we make sure the message is consistent and effective, no matter who's executing it through which discipline? And so actually Will and I met at Crispin at that first job years ago in 2005. And he reached out and we started talking about the role. And it just
and Will's role is?
Will Rowland is the global CMO of Goodyear.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
Which is nice when you start off at an amazing shop too.
Yeah. And I think there was a mentality built into Crispin back in those days that anyone who worked there kind of still shares, and you can shorthand a lot of things.
Yeah.
And you really have a lot of respect for creativity. And I think if I think back to to what I, as a young person, was looking for when I first started looking at agencies, it was creativity. And at every move we've just discussed, I think that's been the theme, is how can someone who's aware they're not a creative, because those are super hardworking, insanely talented people, how can I still be a part of that world and help that world? And so I just looked for roles that could do that throughout my career.
I love it. That makes a lot of sense and a lot of good lessons so far. When do you develop your love for cars?
Yeah.
Has that always been a thing?
I don't know what my first Hot Wheel was. There were Micro Machines at that time too, if you remember that brand at all.
That's
it's a throwback. Yeah, you should look those ads up. There's a guy that talks real fast. So from being a kid, I think growing up in the Midwest, cars were a big part of life. And
you realize you weren't a gamer, but
Yeah.
you always in the back of your mind realize you like cars.
yeah, and oddly enough, there's about 5% of people who are gamers who love racing games. I'm one of those 5%.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So
that's a niche.
Niche.
Yeah. So Jack has a couple car guy questions that we took from our listeners. Listeners, if
Let's do it,
you
Jack.
send in questions to Jack Westerkamp, jack@breakenterpod.com. Email him as much as you want.
My email.
I already gave it out.
I can use that mic because we lost
Okay.
the producer mic.
Okay.
Oh,
Come
no.
on over, Jack.
Get
Just
over
come
here.
on over.
Get over here. Guest
Run in here.
spot.
Hey, what's up, Mom?
All right. So this comes from our car guy,
Yeah.
James. He asked, what's the most exciting partnership you've had with an automotive manufacturer, if any? For example, Bugatti will enlist a tire company to make a specific tire for their car. It's not for any other cars besides Bugatti. Has Goodyear ever done anything like that?
Goodyear does tons of that. Yeah. So that's called an OE relationship, where you're the original equipment that comes on the car.
Operational
Efficiency.
excellence.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So it's
Nailed it.
it's a very important part of the business, because a lot of people, when they have a flat tire, they just go in and say, we'll put whatever's on the car back on the car. And that's more of your standard passenger car tire. But when you talk about things like Bugatti, and right now I think something similar that Goodyear's on is the Ferrari, and Dodici Cilindri is the Italian.
Je m'appelle.
That's French, Jack.
Different language. The Ferrari 12-cylinder is one of those OE relationships that we have right now that's on a really premium vehicle. And that's a huge part, not just of, kind of the replacement tire business and people getting new tires, but also like when you're on a car like that, you can create content with it. You can start to think about how to work the relationship and the partnership. And so we are on the lookout for those things all the time. And I think as Goodyear sort of modernizes its approach to marketing and communications, you'll see us shift who we choose to build those relationships with.
Hell yeah. OE, operational efficiency. Got it. Okay. Second question from car guy James. He asked, was there a fundamental shift in the approach to tire manufacturing as EVs have become more prevalent with far higher vehicle weights? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, thank you, James.
Yeah.
For your excellent questions.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, James.
I appreciate it. So yeah, EV is a really interesting part of the category right now, and I think the tires themselves are under such extreme pressures with a vehicle at those type of weights. I mean, if you look at a Rivian, it's a 9,000-pound pickup truck, and just normal driving conditions are going to wear those tires down extremely fast. So as we produce new tires, we have to think about, all right, what's the longevity? And then as you message the tire, you have to think about, how can we tell these drivers who are now maybe for the first time experiencing tire wear at a completely different rate than they're used to, that we have the sort of innovative technology to kind of figure that stuff out and help them out in their journey. But it's becoming more and more a piece of the business. And I think as we see EV grow, you're going to see more and more ads specifically dedicated to those types of tires.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Sense. Airships. We got to talk
Yeah,
airships.
everybody
also
wants to
known as
talk.
blimps.
The blimp.
What's going on with those? How many are there?
4 blimps.
How many in total in the world?
I think it's 4.
Well,
It's bad that I think that. I should know that for sure.
They're all Goodyear.
Total in the
blimps.
world. The estimate is 25.
Oh, really?
I'm making that up, but I think that's right.
Jack, we have a guy for that.
Yeah,
Shit.
yeah. Jack's.
How many
he
total
was too
blimps
busy
are
being on the
there? I
microphone.
bet you it's 12.
You think it's 12? I'm sticking with 25. Okay.
There are roughly 25 blimps currently in existence.
That's why he's the pro.
probably
That's why.
shouldn't have.
Why am I even talking? 25 blimps. How many are owned or have the
Owned
Goodyear?
or operated.
Operated.
Yeah.
By
So
Goodyear.
there's 4, 3 in the U.S. and 1 in Europe. We operate the one in Europe. We own the ones in the U.S.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
they have fun names.
What should I ask what the names are?
Yeah,
I gotta
so
ask. What are they?
It's Christine. They're all named after horror movies. So Christine,
Jack's Love
Carrie,
Life.
and I'm going. That's funny. I'm gonna blank on the third one. What is it? Give me the 3 names. Jack,
I'm already.
help me out.
Oh, God, this is so hard. They don't give me those names. They're giving me different names.
Yeah, Airship One.
Like Spirit of America.
Yeah,
Wingfoot One.
yeah, it's the nicknames. But Christine, Carrie, and one other one that
Horror films.
gives you the memory of a horror film from the 70s or 80s.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
interesting. And we're going to see more of those. They go to events.
You're going to see a lot more of those. So I will give you one secret strategy that's coming up. And that is our favorite exciting thing that's going to kick off here in about a month is bad blimp behavior, which is, going to be interesting. Bad blimp. There's a lot of events that don't have airspace regulations. So, what if we were just there? What if we just started showing up?
Events that don't.
We're 100 now. We can walk into anywhere.
You can walk into any room. You can walk into any
I'm
room.
not gonna be able to sleep.
Wow.
Yeah, so start looking out for things, races, other events, things like that. Places where maybe we're not the tire sponsor, but they don't own the airspace.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I love it. Well,
Yeah.
Taylor, thank you so much for coming on
Thank
the
you.
show. It's
Thank
been a
you both.
pleasure. I hope people reach out. I wish you all the best in your new role. You are already crushing it.
Thank
We're
you.
excited for the future, and we'll
Thank
be
you.
looking up in the skies.
Really appreciate what you guys are doing. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.